Hey Cube lovers, thanks for tuning in once again to Cube Outside the Box. We're going to talk about Cube and it's going to get weird. Why am I all dressed up today? Well, thanks for noticing. It's certainly not because we're allowed to leave the house anytime soon. No, today I'm back with another installment of the Cubie Awards. Today I'm going to be reviewing the top 5 creatures that you should consider from the recent set, Commander Legends. Let's dive right in. First up is an honorable mention that I wanted to bring up, the card Hans Eriksson. And the reason that I want to make an honorable mention of this is just the absolute investment of flavor that goes into this particular card. The combination of this card with Safi Eriksdottir and the art that depicts Safi in the background, how this ties into that really old card, Akhan's Run, all ties together, and then even the function of the card matches with the flavor. It's amazing. It's chef kiss. So I will say that in some lower powered cubes, there's actually a decent chance that Hans might make an okay card for you. I'm not totally sure if this will fit into many cubes, but it's one that I'm going to test in mine just because of the fact that it acts as a cheater. This card does cheat a creature out for you some of the time, and the thing worth noting is that even when you don't get the creature, you at least get to draw a card. So at a minimum, swinging in with this 1/4, if it can tussle or survive that attack, is going to get you some kind of value. The fact that it's 4 toughness means it can get in there from time to time, and it also means it's outside bolt range. Again, probably not great for the higher powered environments, but certainly worth taking a look at, and fun as hell regardless. Starting off the actual list at number 5 is Abomination of Llanowar. This is an interesting card. The only tribes really worth doing in most cubes that are not tribal focused are usually humans and elves. You kind of accidentally end up with those tribes being supported in a lot of cubes because a lot of green creatures that are good, especially the ramp creatures, the dorks, and the ones that have other ETB effects, like the Rejuvenator, are elves, incidentally. In fact, Imperious Perfect is already run in 6.5% of cubes on Cube Cobra. That's actually a reasonable amount to make this worth considering. The other thing is that the Abomination looks at what's in your graveyard, which I think is very important because Golgari tends to be about the graveyard anyway. So there's a decent chance that you can have either a grindy, recursive, Jundi kind of a deck where you're bringing your elves back and you're getting those ETB triggers over and over again. Or you can simply pack your deck full of green and hopefully some black elves, since there are some black ones worth running, and just make this a large creature. Worth noting, there are going to be plenty of times where a turn 1 elf is going to make this a turn 2 2/2 with both Vigilance and Menace, and I actually think that's a relevant creature. So check out the number of elves that you already have, especially if there are some outside of just green, and this may be just a nice easy role filler that you can throw in to go with it. Following that up with number 4, we have the big, the terrible, the Apex Devastator. Well, it sure is big. I think the big question for me is, where is the trample? A 10/10 with no relevant evasion is kind of a ripoff. That being said, there's some nuance to this card that I want to go over real quick. The big thing to remember is that Cascade is in fact a cast trigger. It happens when you cast this card. So cheating it in with things like Sneak Attack, Ilhar, Green Sun Zenith is not going to get you that value. You're just going to get a big 10/10 that's going to die to Doomblade. On the other hand, if you have Turbo Ramp in your cube, something like Raphelos or Gaia's Cradle, or if you have cheaters like Djinn of Wishes, Urza, and Aetherworks Marvel, which allow you to play the card, not just to put it onto the battlefield, then this is actually worth considering. Because, at a minimum, even if this spell gets countered, you're going to get all 4 Cascade triggers. And that means that you're going to get 4 cards that cost up to, and including, possibly 9 mana out of your deck. If you build your deck right, there's a good chance that you get some really decent value out of this card, regardless of what happens after you cast it, or cheat it using an Aetherworks Marvel style cheat. So this is definitely worth considering, but it does fit into a specific niche of cube. If the only way that you can get this down is with a Sneak Attack or a Green Sun Zenith, or even a Reanimate spell, then this is probably not the fatty for you. Coming in hot at number 3 is Bell Borka Spectral Sergeant. Well, we wanted White or Boros to do something unique, and well, here it is. One important thing about this card is that I think we need to be cautious about additive distraction. So there's 2 big things going on here. Let's tackle the first one, which is every time you exile a card, you note the CMC, and Bell Borka's power is equal to the highest number you've noted this turn. So each turn the slate starts over as far as noting CMCs and whether or not they buff up the power. The good thing here is that White tends to have a lot of exile effects. So when you hit a Settle the Wreckage or a Path to Exile or an O-Ring, you are going to potentially bump up Bell Borka's power. And you won't bump it down because it's always the highest one for the turn. But even if that's not something that's super relevant to you, the thing about Bell Borka that's important to remember is that it always gives you card advantage, because every turn you're going to exile a card from the top of your library, and you're allowed to play it. As noted with the Apex Devastator, the play word here is the relevant one, because that allows you to play a land. So even if you exile a land when you need one, you can play it this turn. You're basically getting a personal Howling Mine with 5 toughness. Speaking of that, while this does die to Doomblade, just like, well, everything that's not a black creature, the fact that this has 5 toughness means that it's well outside the range of a number of damage-based removals, and it's going to be able to block pretty nicely. Obviously, this is not the top end of your aggro deck, unless you can reliably exile something for a really high CMC multiple turns in a row, but it could be a key to your mid-range deck, which Boros often has trouble accessing. So this could actually be a really nice way to move your red-white section in a new direction without forfeiting too much on the aggro front. So now with number 2, we are getting into, if you'll excuse the saying, some serious shit. Sakashima of 1,000 Faces is a pretty neat Spark Double variant. The key here is that Sakashima comes down with a number of very small but very important differences from Spark Double, which is arguably one of the best creature copying spells or creature copying creatures out there. Like Spark Double, Sakashima can be a copy of any creature that you control, and unlike Spark Double, Sakashima has 3 power and 1 toughness. While this is pretty flimsy, it does mean that Sakashima has a slightly higher floor than Spark Double. If you have no creatures on board or no copyable creatures or no creatures that you want to copy, at least Sakashima can come down as a 3/1, which is definitely not great for 4 mana, but I'd rather have that emergency use than none at all. Similar to Spark Double, Sakashima is going to ignore the legend rule. However, Sakashima is going to let you ignore it for all of your permanents. And the reason that this is relevant, especially if you're already running Spark Double and especially if you're running more than one other clone, is that this now allows you to clone the same creature or the same legendary creature over and over and over again. So you can cast something like Urza and then copy it with Sakashima, and then copy it with a mirror image, or a stunt double, or another spark double, whatever other variants of clones you have, or even using a spell like quasi-duplicate to make more copies of it without worrying about the legend rule. Now, that's a little bit of a corner case. Not everyone runs a copy tribal, but clones are pretty fun and can be very powerful if you have the right effects on board. So Sakashima probably is not a replacement for Spark Double, but if you're already running that and you're looking for another high-powered one that has a similar feel and effect, this is worth adding to your cube. The one last thing to note is that Spark Double will copy a Planeswalker, and it will come down with either a +1/+1 counter or a loyalty counter in addition to what they normally would, whereas Sakashima does not. So there are definitely some trade-offs here. I do think Spark Double wins in the last analysis, but I think running both is the real big brain play. Which brings us to the number 1 spot. And I just need to take a moment to soak in this card, because this is the card I've been waiting for. Zara, Renegade Recruiter. I am very excited about this card. There's a lot going on here that I want to talk about. I'll try to keep it brief. First of all, like Bell Borka, how long have we been waiting for Izzet to do something other than count your fucking spells? Thank you for a card that does something different. So let's get into it. A 4/3 flyer for 5 is actually pretty good. It may not be the best rate out there, but I actually think it's pretty decent, especially in red-blue, which is not known for having big creatures. And in a teamer deck, this is going to fit in just fine. You could splash this into a blue something flyers deck. There are lots of options. As a human, it has a relevant tribe to it. Pirate probably isn't relevant to your cube. If it is, great. It's certainly relevant in Commander Legends. There's a number of pirates that I considered trying out just because they all look at how many pirates you have, or they activate when pirates come down. The big thing here is Zara has a really good opportunity to generate some significant value, and it all hinges on the density of creatures in your cube and in your average cube deck. So if you tend to have decks that have lots of creatures in them, Zara is going to be a fantastic card a lot of the time. And when it's not, you're gonna know it because you're gonna be playing against the spells deck or a very clear spell heavy creature light control deck. Even then, you might be willing to play Zara just for the opportunity to get two things. One, the opportunity to maybe get their finisher, and two, the opportunity to take a peek at their hand. People play Gitaxian Probe and play 2 life and a card just to be able to look at someone's hand. Zara's floor is a 4/3 flyer that's going to get you at least one look at your opponent's hand. If they have a kill spell in there, you're going to see it regardless because they're going to take Zara down with it. And if Zara is bad, that's not the worst thing in the world. But here's the thing. You're often going to be able to get a creature out of their hand, which you're going to swing with automatically. And the cool thing about that is the choices that it presents your opponent are generally not great, especially since the person who controls Zara is the one who gets to pick the creature that comes out of the hand. So there's a decent chance that you might force your opponent into a situation where they have to trade their own creature for their own creature. You may force them into a situation where they have to take some damage because they want to get that creature back to their hand versus killing it. And even if you present those choices and they make a choice you don't like, a lot of cubes run things like Fling or Thud or other effects that sacrifice creatures. So there's a good chance that you can just swing with one of their creatures, force them into a bad choice, and then kill off their creature regardless. So Zara has the potential to have a lot of legs in a cube that is creature heavy. Obviously, as someone who runs a cube that's creatures only, this card is an absolute godsend. I cannot wait to put the etched foil version of this. Actually, it's already in my cube. I just can't wait to play it. This card is bananas for me. But even so, I really think you should give it a second look because it's a very interesting, very unique effect. And Izzet has trouble having good creatures that don't just look at the number of spells in your hand or that you've cast or that are in your graveyard or in exile or whatever. They're all Ralzarek and Enigma Drake variants. Zara does something different, and I think that's very much worth celebrating. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there and let you get back to your life. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this content, or hell, even if you didn't, please go ahead down to the show notes, click all the links, press all the buttons, follow, like, subscribe, thumbs up, share. Please let people know about this video. Go ahead and comment and tell me if there's a creature that you're particularly excited about putting into cube or testing in a cube, even if you're not sure if it's going to be good. Let's start a conversation about it. Definitely check me out on Twitch because I've got a really exciting couple of projects and a bunch of exciting guests coming up very soon. By the time you're seeing this video, some of them may already have come on. So do not wait to go ahead and do that. In the meantime, please stay healthy, please stay safe, and I will see you next time. We got that, right? That's it? That's all we need, right? All right, cut it.